The other thing I love about this, and I don't think it's any accident, is that you came through a big part of your journey with trust is through the ontological approach to everything, as you say.
Yes, right.
The great thing about trust is it fits so well with the ontological approach. So what I mean by that is it's very easy to think of trust as something, well, this person is not trustworthy. And that's what a lot of people go through their life saying, oh, this person is trustworthy. But actually, applying that ontological approach, I get to see that actually it's my experience of that person based on my standards that I apply to trust. And so I might see this person as trustworthy, you might experience them as not trustworthy. And so it brings the spotlight back onto the observer, as we say in the ontological approach, onto me and how I see it. And what I love about that is it keeps my hands on the wheel. It doesn't put the power out there in the world. It keeps my power with me in terms of how I choose to see things. And then even more than that, of course, in the ontological approach, this isn't just a cognitive piece. There's the language, there's the body, there's the emotion. And so trust is really present in all three of those domains. It's not just a cognitive piece. And so I've really found, since I've really started taking a deeper dive into the ontological approach, trust they fit together so beautifully in terms of if you really want to become adept at working with trust, the ontological approach really fits well for that.
Yes, absolutely. The notion that the other thing too that I find is often a big aha for people through this ontological approach, in part, is that trust isn't just one on-off switch.
Mm.
That either I trust you completely or I don't trust you at all. That instead I can think about trusting someone conditionally. I can put boundaries around some aspects of their behavior that affect me in some way that I don't trust, while at the same time saying I do trust them in other areas. And so I can continue to work with them. I'm just going to protect myself from their quote unquote untrustworthy behavior in this area. And so, and I love what you said too about puts it back on me to say, okay, it's my assessment or my interpretation of their behavior that is giving rise to my assessment that they are either trustworthy or not, or sort of trustworthy, or I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it comes down to we make an assessment based on the other person's behavior. They're making assessments based on our behavior.
Absolutely.
And so having a framework, which is what this course is all about, is really teaching how to use that framework. Having a framework to think about, okay, how can I identify those ways in which I can behave that other people will see me as trustworthy?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
how can I make wise choices about trusting other people based on their behavior? So those are big pieces of the value of using this framework. So.
Yeah, I think you've touched on something very powerful there for me as you said it, which was it's also about how I can shift my behavior. See, in my experience, people love to talk about, well, this person needs to change that, so therefore then I will trust them. What people are not quite so happy to do sometimes is shine the mirror back on themselves and talk about, well, actually, now I look at my own behavior, I can, this structure, this framework allows me to get a sense of why maybe some of my stakeholders or my relationships, people I'm not feeling trusted here. I'm not kind of feeling that other people are trusting me, but that requires me to look at me. And that can be a little more challenging in terms of looking in the mirror, but the framework, the tools, the practices, as you're talking about, can really help with that. So it's not just about looking at other people and the world, it's also looking at myself. And if I talk about myself for a moment in terms of where that's been really useful, it's been especially useful for me in this Asia, but in particular Southeast Asia, where I've lived for well over 10 years now, because a lot of what you're saying is different in different cultures. And it's just invisible to me. So through my, obviously I grew up in England and I have a lot of that still, even though I've lived in Asia for 20 years, but it's very invisible because that's what I grew up with. And so a lot of my norms, if you want, or practices or assumptions around trust are kind of embedded, and I don't really get conscious of them until I start being in conversation, which of course is the heart of all the ontological approach. Once I'm in conversation, I begin to see that actually people from different cultures, and not only cultures, different ages, maybe different gender, they don't see it quite the way I see it. And that is such a rich area of exploration, especially in the business world that I see with all these multifunctional APAC teams and regional teams. It can be a real shift, a real opportunity to completely shift the effectiveness of a team once you start applying this model of yours, the practices, the structure, to real-time team situations. It can be a real paradigm shift when you do that.
Absolutely, yes. That trust shows up differently. So let me say it this way. The framework that we're talking about here applies in every culture, but how it applies in different cultures is the key. And it takes, as you're saying, takes listening, takes observing, takes going, oh, what is transparent to me that's going on here that's different. And I need to take a look. I need to peer underneath the surface and say, oh, wow, this is different here.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got, and this is another reason why I'm so excited that you and your organization are taking this and moving it forward in Asia, because you have the experience in the Asian cultures that I don't so much.
Right, thank you. Well, looking forward to getting started with it. So, Charles, one of the things I'm interested in, we've been talking about this, looking at how the trust model and the practices, why they're important. I wonder, do you have an example maybe of where you've been working in a corporation and you've really seen the benefits of applying this model, the structure, and the practices?
Yes. Let me say that, first of all, there's plenty of evidence now that has documented the benefits of high trust on a team. Google did a whole bunch of research on this a few years back, and they had these great results from that research. But it's very clear that from that and many other research, other research that's been done, let me say that correctly, that teams really benefit from strong trust. So at the high trust end of things, the benefits are increased productivity, innovation, people working well together to get things done, it saves time, there are fewer mistakes, all those kinds of things, fewer things fall between the cracks, there's better relationships between the team and other outside stakeholders of that team. And people on the team actually experience increased well-being as they work with each other.
That's interesting.
They have fun with each other,
Fun
in
the
fun.
trust.
Yes, they actually have what I call camaraderie, a strong sense of camaraderie. They have a sense of they're all in it together. The other end of things is that the low trust teams are pretty disastrous. They don't get things done. They break their promises to other outside stakeholders. And nobody has fun as they're, kind of. But most teams actually are somewhere in between. And this is where trust building can be of real value. And it's been shown that teams that increase their trust, actually, the benefits are huge for the team and for the company, for the organization as well. One team that I worked with about 6 months, started working with about 6 months ago, really had, they went through this process of building some trust with each other. They started out, it's not like they distrusted each other, yeah, trust is, yeah, it's okay, it's not a problem here. As we kind of dug into it and we did a trust assessment, and they saw the data from that, and then they said, maybe we can do better. So again, using this framework, we could say, in what trust domain of these 4 domains in the framework can you do better in?
Right.
Yeah, you're doing really well in this one and this one, and pretty good in this one and this one. Yeah, you guys don't seem to trust each other in this way, in this domain. Let's focus there. And so the outcome of that has been that the team really leveled itself up. The outcome has been that A, there's stronger trust, B, there's greater productivity, and innovation, because this is a team that is kind of focused. It needs to be innovative for the sake of what they're doing within the company. And there's, again, that sense of increased camaraderie. It was there before, but now people, because they're able to feel more intimate with each other. It may be a strange word to use in a business context, but there's greater intimacy, there's greater vulnerability because there's trust, there's greater psychological safety. They're pushing themselves and each other beyond what they formerly thought were their limits.
Yeah. Yes, and I can certainly see that in my own experience. And I think it's interesting you talked about innovation, because I think that's one of the areas that I've seen it with teams. Because, of course, in innovation, by definition, you're going to be taking some risks. You're doing something different. So that's the whole point of innovation. We're going to do something different. And of course, if I do something different, or the team, we say we're going to do something different, it might not work. And so you've got to have an underlying basis of some, bedrock of trust for that to really, it's almost like it unlocks the possibility of innovation. If it's on the lower trust end, then innovation becomes very difficult because everyone's worried about making a mistake. And oh my God, I'm going to be held personally responsible, or the team's going to be killed. And so it completely collapses innovation. So when you said that, that was my last job in business, within innovation. So that really new product development. So that really resonated with me.
So you probably saw a lot of the value of trust in that context.
I did, but interestingly, at that time, this was 25 years ago, I didn't have a structure for it. So
Me too.
We were kind of in the dark a little bit. I think looking back, it's obviously easy with hindsight, but we were kind of grappling in the dark a little bit because we knew we needed trust, so to speak, but we didn't really have a framework or tools back then in the company I was working in, and we just inched towards it somehow. But that's why I think one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it is that I experienced not really having tools and structure when I was in the business world.